So we're here in Durness. This is Philip Tanzer, he's a supporter of the Scottish Family Party, and I've come to Durness to have a chat and to meet some people, and we thought we'd just do a little interview while I'm here. So, Philip, tell us something about yourself.
Hi, my name is Philip Tanzer. I'm originally German. I moved to Scotland 7.5 years ago in 2012, and I moved to probably the remotest part of Scotland, if you don't count the islands. Tiny community of 350 people, and you probably wouldn't be able to tell from my tattoos and also some of the twists and turns in my life, but I wholeheartedly support almost all the things that the Scottish Family Party stands for. And
if we just clarify that point, if you're watching and you don't have tattoos and you're wondering if you would fit in the family party, I'll assure you we do have lots of supporters without tattoos around their face as well.
Yeah, it's very important for me to publicly support the party because the party has been attacked for example, being homophobic, and I actually used to be a gay porn actor for quite a few years, and I was quite well known and public about that, and I don't agree with groups and people being called homophobic just for having critical views of the LGBT community or LGBTQ agenda, the political agenda, because my views on that are quite critical as well. And I thought, who would be better to support the party than somebody who knows the gay and LGBTQ community?
Yeah. Do you want to tell us something about your experiences in the porn industry? It's really alien to most people.
Well, first I have to talk a little bit about how I identified as gay and how that felt for me and how that changed over my life. So I always knew that I was attracted to men ever since I was a kid, but I was always a very interested person. I looked at life, I looked at other people, I looked at myself. So rather than just saying, oh yeah, that's how it is, I would ask myself why certain things are the way they are. As a teenager, I had very first experiences with a guy of the same age, but then I thought, I think I'm gonna try with women as well. And that felt okay, but I didn't feel the magic, so to speak. And then I tried with a man again, and it felt physically wrong, I have to say. It wasn't a good experience, but I felt a bit of magic. And at that time, I was around like 17, 18 years old. People kept asking me like if I was into men or into women, and I said I'm asexual because I actually didn't have a lot of interest in sexuality. I was asexual with a tendency towards man, and people kept saying, oh, so you're gay? And I'm like, no, I feel asexual with a tendency towards men. So you're gay? And I felt this really, people could not deal with me just not wanting to define who I was. And in the end, I felt quite pressured into accepting myself as being gay, even though it didn't feel right to me.
When you say it didn't feel right, in what sense?
It didn't feel right to have a label.
Right.
I felt comfortable with sexuality when I was around 27. Up until then, I would say I tried, and I was like, does that feel okay? No, it doesn't. And I didn't feel like I wanted a relationship with a man. I always, till now, I never thought that a relationship with a man would make any sense to me, because a man to me is just more of the same. And I'm not only speaking for myself, I'm not speaking for other people that identify as gay or whatever at all, just talking to myself. But I felt pressured into this label, and I knew that, well, I'm gonna live and die alone and have some sexual experiences with men along the way. At one point, when I started to go out in the gay scene, I looked like a mix between Marilyn Manson and Prince, and gay people can be quite intolerant when it comes to looks that are not the way they're used to. And in the normal gay community, I would say people look down on me, not in a bad way, a little bit. I didn't connect. I can't even blame them, because I didn't connect. I looked very different.
So there were no hate incidents then?
No, there were no hate incidents. No, not at all. But because I didn't connect with the mainstream part of the gay community, I started to go into the leather and fetish part of the gay community, which is overall much older. And full disclosure, I would go into leather bars, which are very sex focused, but I had no interest in sex, so I would go to these places, sit at the bar, and talk to older gay men about politics, religion, and that was really good, because I was like, at least there is a level of intellectual connection that I could make. And at one point, I felt, even though I didn't feel like part of the leather community. As I said, I didn't have sex. At that time I was vegan, so I wasn't even allowed to wear leather. But I read an article, and that article, it was an advertisement, something like that, for the German Mr. Leather competition. So, and they were looking for the right guy to represent the gay leather and fetish community. And I have always been a very, very spiritual person, and something inside me told me I should join this competition. And the reason why I felt like I should join this competition was because I saw a lot of negative aspects in the gay community. Huge amount of drug use, obviously a lot of promiscuity, HIV.
Just go back to the drug use, why do you think that is?
Pardon?
Why do you think that is?
I think that has different reasons. I think, for one, as a gay person, you're already outside of society in some ways, and you're already perverted, so why not go full crazy? So there are less rules. I would say, for example, if you go into the gay scene is a party scene. It's not like, as far as I know, it's not like that for lesbians, for example. They're more political, where gays are more live your life, go to parties, have a good time. They have a youth cult, and party music is connected with party drugs. And I would say you find not the same amount, but maybe a similar amount of drug use in the straight party scene.
Right.
The difference is that in the straight scene, people at one point start committed relationships and maybe start a family, and then you have to make different life choices. Where in the gay community, you can keep that lifestyle up much, much longer, and nobody criticizes you for it, because the gay community is very tolerant. I would actually say supportive towards unhealthy lifestyle choices, and that is something that I always opposed. And I became German Mr. Leather because I wanted to oppose that. So
Right. Just go back, I'm just interested. So is it that the gay people perceive that they've crossed boundaries, moral boundaries if you like, that they think other people are thinking that, So since other people are thinking that, they may as well go on to others.
I think that's how.
Or is it more they feel within themselves that they've crossed the boundary?
I think it used to be that they were outside of society a bit more, and so they had to create a subculture. And in this subculture, there were different rules. High sex drive. I think it's a fact that in straight men would potentially have as much sex as gay men, but women are not as accessible as, and protect their sexuality more than men. So if you have two men, there are no boundaries. And I think that this sex culture, there is something, I'm going to call it amoral, but not in a judgmental way, because I mean I was part of that lifestyle, and I enjoyed parts of that lifestyle at one point. So when I say immoral, I would say it's just outside of society moral norms. You go into that and nobody questions it. And because nobody holds you accountable, you can just take as many drugs as you want to. Nobody looks at you in a weird way. And by the way, I've never taken any drugs in my life. And that's why I really wanted to oppose that, because I thought just because you have a different lifestyle doesn't mean that you can't look after yourself and look after others.
So just go back a bit more. I'll let Karen the story in it. When you were at the early stages of that journey, what messages would have been helpful for you, do you think? What do you wish someone had said to you?
Well, first of all, I really wish I could go back in time, or somebody would have been there, would have said, look, Philip, listen to your heart, be yourself. You don't have to be part of a group, and you don't give in to pressures from the outside. And that's pretty much what the society, or what gay people, the LGBTQ community preaches towards the mainstream society. Oh, don't pressure people into a heteronormative lifestyle. Well, don't pressure people into a gay normative lifestyle. Support people in living a healthy and responsible life. I think we should really teach young people, whatever you do, be responsible. Whoever you have sex with, be responsible. I think that now people talk about a lot about consent. I think that's a great thing, but it needs to go both ways. Only boys are taught that they have to wait for consent from a girl. Girls have to wait for consent from a boy as well. Boys from boys. And overall, guard your sexuality. I think it's okay if people experiment, but be aware of what you do. Protect yourself and others, and don't do stuff just because you think, oh, I'm 17 years old, I haven't had sex yet. So what? You can wait. If it doesn't feel right for you, if you haven't met the right person, wait. There are so many stories of people that had horrible experiences the first time they had sex. My first time with a man was really bad, and I can't even say that the person did anything wrong. That's just how he was used to interact with other men. I mean, it was my first time. It was a party. He took me home, and we had a nice conversation before. As soon as I had taken my clothes off, I was just a piece of meat, and I was treated as a piece of meat, and I felt really bad afterwards. Now, if somebody had told me, don't let a one-night stand be your first sexual experience, try to find somebody you connect with, maybe I would have had a better first experience.
I'll chip in with my view. We're going off on a tangent. We'll get back to this story in a minute. This is not family policy particularly, but my understanding of marriage, the way marriage is supposed to function, is that that's the point where people start having sex. So at marriage, people enter into a domestic relationship, they move in together, and they enter into lifelong commitment, and they start having sex. So those three things are tied together. So in a person's mind, they're part of the same deal, if you like. So if say there's a frustration in the domestic arrangements, frustration in domestic life, then the other things are alongside it. So if someone thinks, right, I could have sex somewhere else. Well, the institution of marriage says, well, no, that's not okay. In order to have sex, you need this total commitment, and you need to be able to get through the ups and downs of life together as well. I think if those three things are allowed to be separated, then I think there tends to be a weaker relationship. If someone's of the mindset that you can get sex in lots of different contexts with lots of different people, then for a bloke in particular, I mean, basically, very roughly speaking, in a relationship, women are looking for commitment, men are looking for sex. So the institution of marriage, as it used to be understood, it was like a price-fixing cartel on the part of women. They were saying the price of sex is lifelong commitment.
Yeah.
So you blokes, none of you are going to get sex until you do what we want, which is commit to a stable, long-term, faithful relationship. And the men will pay whatever price is put on it. If they've added a few £1,000, they'd have paid that as well.
Yeah.
But that was the price. So men did that, and that produced the most stable family life in the nation. I think that was really valuable. The statistics on sex, we're talking about heterosexual sex, it's bonding effect. It's to do with chemicals in the brain, oxytocin, whatever. But the bonding effect is most effective the first time.
Yeah.
So you've got two people who haven't had sex with anyone else. That bonding effect is at its strongest and is most likely to result in a stable lifelong relationship.
I know the statistics, and I have to say that the idea of waiting with sexual intercourse till you are fully committed definitely does have a certain magic about it, and something very, very special. And I think if you can have that, I completely respect and support that.
Yeah, but you just said they're fully committed. I think if you're saying to like 15 or 16-year-olds, are you fully committed to the boy down the road? It's quite hard to judge that. Whereas with marriage, I mean, a 16-year-old boy talking to the girl he wants to have sex with, he'll say the right things in terms of his eternal commitment. Whereas marriage makes it public, and it raises the stakes with it. Now, in terms of everything I was explaining there about marriage, about the philosophy of marriage, as it was traditionally understood, it's not really understood that way in the mainstream anymore.
And I think that this doesn't work anymore in our society because there are no societies pressures. There are no structures that support this ideal.
It works within subcultures.
Yes.
I would imagine it would work within the Muslim community, works within Christian communities. Obviously, there's cross influences going on as well. So I think in sex education in schools, for example, I think children should be presented with that philosophy of marriage, that reasoning for it, with the statistics. So say that's the rationale for this institution. You're going to make your own choices. There's no law involved here. You're going to make your own choices. But in order to help you to make an informed choice, we'll give you that understanding of the institution of marriage. I was talking to someone who taught sex education once, and they said, I just don't get marriage. I don't see the point of it. And it made me think, that's like a maths teacher saying, I don't really get division. I can't see what that's all about. It's such an important thing.
But I would say that if we don't want indoctrination in school, we should try not to indoctrinate, and that means not indoctrinating in the direction of the very traditional religious understanding of marriage. I think what I fully support is telling people your choices, the freedoms that you take, come at a price. And I think that people should be made aware of the price. And I do think that statistics, for example, the more sex partners you have, the less likely it is that you actually gonna stay married and
Yeah.
and so on, and they're like, I saw the statistics they are addressing. I think these statistics should can be shown, but still in a rather neutral way.
Yeah, it would be indoctrination if the government said, right, yeah, you, Richard Lucas, your job, write our curriculum, and it had teachers standing there saying, look, this is why you should get married, and so you got the message, that's what you ought to do. Good people get married, and that's the way to structure relationships. That would be indoctrination.
Yeah.
But at the moment, there's a different message that's, I would say, is indoctrination, because it's a single unified message. I would say let them hear different perspectives from a valid range. I mean, if someone's saying, oh, I think you should have one night stands every week, whatever, okay, well, we'll leave them out. We can eliminate some really extreme views. But within the spectrum of normal opinion, I think they could hear the different things. There's the health information, that's uncontroversial, no one disagrees with the delivery of that. But then different understandings. The general one for the Scottish Government is don't have sex until you feel it's the right time, till you feel it's in a loving relationship, etc. I would offer a different perspective from that. But if children and young people hear all the different perspectives, then they've got the information. They can make their own decisions.
I agree that that a variety of information should be out there, and this information should be kept factual and as neutral as possible, so that they can make up their own mind.
Yeah. So if they are going to hear a moral perspective, then that's okay, because you can have a variety.
Mm-hmm.
So if we translate to a different subject, let's say we're talking about alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the facts about alcohol, uncontroversial. No one's going to say don't teach them about that. That's all fine. But then you can have different approaches to alcohol. So one approach is teetotalism, which is increasingly popular with young people. So someone could make the case why they think actually the best solution to the issue of alcohol is to leave it alone completely. And they could say these are the benefits.
That's what I did. Yeah.
They could even say that that's why I do it.
Mm-hmm.
They could have someone else saying, well, I don't think that's the best. I think there's reasons why alcohol can be a good thing, but these are the boundaries you might want to put around it.
Yeah.
This is another responsible approach to it. But I think, so they can hear that. With the teetotal person, a lot of them might think, well, that's not for me. But they might have more respect for that position. It also might move them a little bit more in the responsible direction, move them along the spectrum in that direction. So diversity of viewpoints, of acceptable viewpoints, which also provides them with a range of moral perspectives, got the information, then they're in the best position to develop a responsible attitude.
Absolutely, yeah.
Anyway, we need to get back to Mr. Leather.
Yeah, exactly. So I decided to join the competition to become German Mr. Leather because I wanted to. Spiritually, I had the feeling that it was the right thing to do. So I had a voice within the community, and I could address certain issues from within the community. And I won the election, and I was incredibly active for a whole year, and I was very well respected within the community. And every month I had a column in a gay magazine, and I was writing about drug abuse and intolerance within the community, and commitment in relationships and respect and all of that. And I have to say that it did gain me respect within the community, in the leather community. I would say the people that didn't like what I had to say didn't attack me for it. The people that liked it, they were vocal and supported me. But doing that for a whole year, being at different parties, handing out condoms and telling people to look after themselves, after a while became incredibly draining, because you would see so much unprotected sex and drug use and stuff like that. And within a year I would see people going from really good looking young guys to literally zombies. And after a year my time as German Mr. Leather was over. But during this time I got in contact with some people that were working in the porn industry as well, and they were asking me, oh, what about porn? And I said no, because I never liked porn. I never liked the attitude in porn, because It doesn't portray sexuality in a positive light. It only amplifies the extreme and excessive aspects of sexuality. But I needed money. I was young and needed the money. And at one point, and I talked to a friend of mine who was a porn actor, and I said, "What were your experiences?" And he said it was actually very nice. Like everybody was nice, and blah 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 blah. And then I talked to my father, and I said, "Look, I'm thinking about doing porn, and I think I might be able, similar as with German Mr. Leather, I might be able to bring something positive to something that otherwise is quite dark." And I filled out an application in an American porn studio, and they replied and they invited me over to America, and I started there. And I have to say, almost all my experiences, especially over there in America, were very, very good. The people working there were caring, loving, supportive. I talked to the boss, and he wanted me as an exclusive, and I said, "Well, I'm sorry, because my body is okay, but I'm not as muscular and strong as the other guys." And he said, "Look, if you want to gain muscles, that's absolutely fine, but please, please, please don't do anabolics and stuff like that, and don't take drugs, and look after yourself." And so many times he said, the most important thing is that I'm doing okay, and that I don't go down this rabbit hole of drugs and start, and that was absolutely not what I expected from the porn industry. That being said, one of the bosses of the company is suffering under huge drug problems, and he was an actor himself. And so the other boss, they were friends. So he knew what could happen.
Yeah. But was it genuine care, or was it?
It was genuine
interest?
No, it was genuine care. And as I said, I had almost just the best experiences. At one point, I worked in Hungary for 1 or 2 movies, and that was horrible. It was, I would say, it was abusive. I would say that people were being raped. It wasn't rape because they didn't say no, but I would say that the environment was in a way that it's almost impossible to say no. And I think that's what a lot of actors face, predominantly female actors in the straight porn industry. I'm not completely 100% against porn, and I don't think it should be banned or forbidden or any of that. I do think that actors need protection, and I do think that society should be made aware, especially young people should be made aware how negative the impact of pornography is. So even though I was working in the porn industry, and even though my experiences working there were positive, I also know that the effects of watching porn can be quite devastating. I was suffering under erectile dysfunction for a couple of years because I was watching too much porn, and more and more younger people are suffering under that because they are so trained to get stimulation from a screen, and only through extreme sexual actions instead of soft touch and things like that. So I think we create sexual or emotional and sexual cripples. And I think that is something that really needs to be highlighted in our society, and not with a moral finger raised, just with common sense, saying if you want to have a healthy sex life, maybe don't watch too much porn. I think parents should talk to their children about it, very open. It's almost impossible to ban kids from watching it. They will get in contact with it, with it. So train them to be responsible and train them, look, this is not depiction of sexuality, this is science fiction. Not science fiction, but you know what I mean.
What do you think of the UK government's attempts to impose age restrictions with online porn? Have you seen that? So,
Yeah,
so
yes.
to watch porn, you have to get a pass from the news agents or something.
I heard that this law only works for pay-per-view porn. So I don't think that this restriction. That's what I heard. I don't think that this restriction works for free porn.
I would assume the government would be policing that. So any pornography site would need to have the system to check the age. But I'm sure it'll be very difficult to police. It's hard to imagine it working out. I don't know. I think it's a very. I don't know statistically, for example, if pornography, the accessibility of pornography reduces rape or increases rape. I'm not sure of that. I do think that I don't think that it should be banned. Just sticking with the kiddie side, I think it's uncontroversial that pornographic magazines and the newsagents shouldn't be sold to children.
Yeah,
I don't think anyone disagrees with that.
Very, very true.
And that's a matter of the law. So it seems to me obvious that if people agree with that principle, then the same principle needs to be translated to the internet. Now, even though it might be difficult to implement, it seems to me obviously correct that the government tries to step into that to protect children from it one way or another. How successful it's going to be, I don't know. That people have said about privacy issues, people having to.
I think the big problem is that it will be weaponized. I think that I don't think that you can trust. I don't think that you can trust any agency with the information what kind of porn you watch. I mean, it's already on your Google router and stuff like that. I don't think that politicians, public people, should be so vulnerable based on their sexuality. I do agree that we need to protect especially children, but actually everybody. But I think that should probably be done by a change of attitude and actually saying, look, we tried sexual freedom and it doesn't work. It hurts a lot of people. That doesn't mean banning things and making everything illegal. I think it comes with education and knowledge and enlightenment.
Yeah. So I think for young people, I think the UK government is trying to do something that's right, but the way of doing it is a different matter. I don't know.
I agree. I think we need to protect kids. Have you heard about this case where mothers were filming porn so that their children would actually watch loving sexuality? I didn't hear the whole story, but to be honest, I was thinking about something quite similar at one point as well. I thought if people watch porn, like loving pornography should actually be advertised rather than the completely horrible, dark stuff and saying, well, have you tried watching something positive? I mean, that's why I joined the porn industry. It didn't work out that well, but
I would say with porn, no matter how realistic, loving, or whatever it is, I think there's still the fundamental problem of it. Again, it's sexual gratification outside of any sort of relationship, let alone a committed relationship. But the evidence is that it undermines the ability to form real relationships, no matter what the form of the pornography is. I did a debate on pornography a few years ago now at the Edinburgh Science Festival, and one of the people I was against was a porn actress. It was quite interesting, so I did quite a bit of research. And say with pornography, there is that effect, that more pornography that's viewed, then less chance of a stable relationship with a real person. But it also talked about, what I found very concerning was the progressive aspect with it.
You could turn this argument around and say, well, people that are in a stable relationship are less likely to watch porn. So statistics are always a bit tricky, because the less you have a stable relationship, the more porn you will watch. So maybe it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, just saying.
I would assume that the research would have taken that into account.
Well, since I learned more about how feminists misrepresent statistics, I'm very careful with all kinds of statistics. But I would agree that the more you satisfy your needs somewhere else, the less likely you are to actually find a relationship.
I would say if no one had ever done any research into it,
it would still make sense.
Because it makes sense. Look at my thing about marriage. So, if you think, right, sexual gratification, that can be separated from this relationship. So I don't need to have this commitment because you can get that somewhere else. So the more people think that the sexual gratification is cheap, then they're less willing to invest and to make sacrifices in order to maintain a relationship that involves it. The other thing about it being progressive is, I've read quite a few accounts of people who said they started watching just some mainstream pornography, but then you watch too much, it doesn't do the trick anymore. So you want to find something different. So it either goes in the direction of getting sort of rougher towards violence or towards strange in different ways, but it can also go in the direction of younger and younger, till it gets to girls who are barely 18.
Or boys.
But then it gets to boys who are 18, girls in particular, are pretending to be younger.
It definitely it definitely goes more and more into extreme directions. In any extreme direction, that goes into younger, that goes into more aggressive, and I completely
So I read accounts of men who were, if you like, mainstream heterosexual men attracted to adult women who, through pornography, basically became paedophiles. Their sexual attraction shifted to younger girls. Now, surely in our society, anyone who's aware of that should see that as a major, major concern about the effect of pornography on people. Now, I think the Scottish government's approach in schools is that looking at porn, perfectly normal, natural, healthy, go right ahead, but bear in mind it's not realistic, don't do too much or you might get addicted or it might lead on to other things. I would say the message that the best approach is to leave it alone completely is also a very positive, worthwhile message for them to hear. Not necessarily like as official policy, but alongside all the other messages, I think there is a strong argument to say the best thing to do is to avoid it completely, rather than living at the top of the slippery slope.
I mean, I haven't had any alcohol for, so I started drinking about 1.5 years ago. Up until then, I drank one night a year when I was hanging out with my comrades from the military, and I raised a glass in remembrance of my comrades that have died. So my approach was no alcohol. I've never smoked in my whole life. So I'm in favor of that route, but that was my choice. I think it's not smart to tell people not to do something. I think it's smart to give people reason not to do something. So if you provide them with the information, you don't. If you say don't watch porn, they will watch porn, and they will potentially ignore the warnings you gave them why they shouldn't watch porn. If you say, if you watch porn, this and this and this will happen to you, then they can make an informed opinion.
Yeah, it's interesting. In Scottish education, you'll hear if you tell them not to do it, they'll just do it. You hear that when it comes to sex and drugs and pornography, whatever. You'll never hear it in terms of homophobia, bullying, whatever. So when it's issues that are aligned with a certain agenda, the message to the kids is you don't do it because it's really bad and you're a bad person if you do it too. Just don't.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and no one comes along and says, "Oh, if you tell them not to, they just won't."
I think
then when it comes to the other issues, there's the idea that if you tell them not to, they probably will. I would say, if someone from a personal perspective presents the case why they think it's best, it's the right thing to do to avoid pornography. For example, you can have an argument like this. Let's say, as a teenager, you watch lots of porn, and then later on, you might be married, you might have kids. Your actions while you're a teenager might have an effect on the stability of your relationship in the future.
potentially.
So your pornography or your promiscuity or whatever, while you were younger, might harm your children in the future. It might harm your partner in the future as well. So it's not, you're taking a risk with your relational future. There's a lot at stake in that. That's going to affect a lot of other people. So the best thing to do, the responsible thing to do, is to try to avoid, to the extent that you can, is to try and avoid this.
And
I think that's a perfectly rational case for people here. If that's presented as like the official policy, then kids are rebellious, that they might think, oh, well, that's a bit extreme or whatever. So you can hear different responsible views as well. But I think hearing that case is important. It's important that they're aware, even from the point of view of understanding the variety of opinions.
See, I would love to go to schools and talk to pupils and tell them my story, like the whole story of me being in porn, the erectile dysfunction, all of that, because I think the best person to tell kids about the dangers of drugs is somebody who almost died of drugs, because I think you can have two approaches. You can have the moral approach, saying don't do it in the first place, and you can have the approach, I'm an example what happens if you do it. And I think if these two work together, that's the best coverage.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. There's two sides of these issues. There's the angle that's normally taken in Scottish education, which is it's a matter of personal risk assessment. Mm-hmm. These are the dangers that might be associated with this. Yeah. So you need to make your mind up whether or not you want to take that risk or not. Whereas it becomes more of a moral issue when you start saying, right, this is how it might affect you, but it's not just going to affect you. There's other people who are going to be affected as well, friends and family, the state. Yeah. So that's what takes it out of the realm of like personal risk assessment into the moral realm. And I think that's the missing element in Scottish education.
I think that the problem in not just Scottish but education in Western countries at the moment is that you can't draw hard lines in the sand unless it's against racism, homophobia, and so on and so on and so on. And I think that I'm in favor of hard lines in the sands, but these hard lines need to be explained. It doesn't make sense to say don't do this unless you explain why people shouldn't do that.
Absolutely. And there's a mountain of reasons for most of the sort of stricter moral positions. We're going off a tangent again. I think it's interesting with schools. If you're going to have like a mainstream government school, then the message presented there is seen as the official line of the state. So there needs to be the caution. That's why this is one perspective, this is another, but you want them to hear the stricter views as well as other views. If you look at, say, a Catholic school, I think that's different. If you go to a Catholic school, you know this is not the government's message necessarily. This is a Catholic school. It's a distinct ethos. It's a distinct body of teaching. So they can be presented in more of a moral context there, because the children are aware that this is the Catholic view. There's other views. This is the Catholic one.
So I get a question. Should the government policy in education, for example, towards homosexuality and I'm going to use homosexuality, not transgenderism just yet. Should it be negative, neutral, or positive?
I think it should present the full range of facts. I think that's the most important thing.
Okay. Yeah.
Because the message at the moment is some people go in this direction, some people go in this direction, or any combination of the two. That's all equally valid, and that's it, equality. So the most important issue is you don't discriminate and recognise that these are all equally valid.
Okay.
Whereas I think young people should be aware of like some of the things we talked about, aware of some of the statistics, some of the outcomes. But lots of young people go through the experience or a phase of describing themselves as bisexual. And there's some research in The Guardian a while ago, I can't remember the figure, was it? More than half of 16-year-olds didn't regard themselves as exclusively heterosexual. So you've got a lot of young people who are thinking, well, you know, I might experiment, I'm not quite sure which direction I'm going in. So if they're looking at that decision, I think it's important that they're aware of the facts related, or the correlations with those decisions when they're...
Here's a little story. When I was German Mr. Leather, that was 2004. And as I said, I was very engaged with like handing out condoms and stuff like that, AIDS prevention. And I was working with the AIDS support groups in Germany. And I would say up until the 90s, you would see a lot of posters hanging up saying, use a condom, protect yourself, blah, 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 blah. That changed in 2000, and it changed to posters saying, I'm HIV positive, and that's okay, my boss still likes me, and I'm still respected, and stuff like that. And there were no more warnings. There was just inclusion posters.
Just to chip in, we went to Amsterdam last year, and they had big posters saying, the HIV positive community welcomes you to Amsterdam, with a picture of all these happy faces on it. But no one did actually welcome us to Amsterdam for that community, as far as I'm aware. But it's just illustrating what you're saying.
And the thing is, the HIV support groups were run by HIV positive men. Their interest was not in minimizing new
cases, infections.
New infections. The interest was minimizing stigma, which I can understand from their point of view, but it's horrible for society, and the new infections there are steadily going up again. And I know that you were talking about PrEP, and that you disagree with PrEP being paid by the NHS, and I completely agree. If you make bad life choices, that's not the fault of society, and society should not pay for it.
There's a difference between picking up the pieces when some harm has befallen someone. But to explain what PrEP is, it's a drug particularly taken by gay men who struggle to use condoms or want to have unprotected sex, and it provides a degree of protection against HIV, not 100%. So assume even someone who's taken that, if, you know, over the years,
the protection is the protection is, as far as I know, quite very high, and the same with condoms. Even condoms don't protect you 100%. What does protect you 100% is a committed lifestyle. If your partner is committed as well.
With PrEP, I heard 84%. The Scottish government's introduced it.
Okay.
So they're financing it. I heard 84%. I saw something recently that said 99%. So let's say it's 99%. So that means out of 100 occasions, it's not effective on one. So it's still a substantial. Risky behaviour increases.
I think we can agree on the fact that stop promoting harmful lifestyles. It's that easy, and I think it's really, really bad that our society is so liberal that you can't publicly say this is unhealthy. Protect yourself and make better life choices.
You can sometimes have something that appears to alleviate a problem but actually makes it worse. Like if someone invented a pill, say, that you could take when you were drunk and it sobered you up immediately.
People would just completely...
Initially you might think that's great, no more drunk drivers, or no more accidents in the home, no more, because you just take the pill in the bathroom at the pub, and that's fine. You're okay, so it'll make it safer. But it will probably do the opposite, because people would get drunker and drunker, to the point where they couldn't actually take the pill.
For me, it's a very slippery slope when it comes to the gay community. I do not want people to hate gay men or LGBTQ people. Of course not. But if they knew how bad this community is when it comes to health and stuff like that, especially the gay community, they would be more than shocked. An example, London, and the bigger cities are definitely worse. In London, they do something, it's called slamming. Slamming is the use of drugs with needles while having sex and sharing the needle. So it's intentionally risky. It's not, oh, I enjoy this, but it's a bit risky. It's not like, no, what's the biggest risk that I can take? And I'm going to take this risk.
Yeah.
And it's not just one-on-one sex. No, it's like orgies and stuff like that, where guys do that. And that, yeah, that's bad.
And then the statistics come through of the physical and mental health problems in the community. And the reaction is, what's it caused by homophobia? It's
Exactly.
evidence that, or discrimination in healthcare.
Yeah.
You hear the line, everyone's got the right to be equally healthy.
Yeah.
So the NHS has got to target more resources to solve those problems.
Okay, that being said, as I said, I don't want people to become homophobic or disgusted at gay people, because there's just a second. Because recently I have met more and more really like committed gay relationships where they were looking after each other, where they didn't take drugs, and I think that this is happening. Some people are going completely off the rails, and some people going to a more heteronormative lifestyle, where they say, well, we focus on our jobs and we focus on our relationships, but you don't see them as much because they live normal lives. So there's the really bad examples and there are the good examples. For me, the bad examples stand out more because the good examples are just not part of society.
I mean, the family parties, what's the family party got to say about like, gay couples? Well, nothing at all. I mean, just citizens alongside. Everything else, we've got things to say about parenting, but gay relationships, no policy, no view. Just going back to what you're saying about homophobia, I think I read a book last year, so I said, we went to the Netherlands, I got a book after. So I'll get to the point, a bit of a long way around. It was talking about the two football teams, Ajax and Feyenoord, that the fans hated each other, the big rivalry. And I think Ajax, there are quite a few Jewish people that support there, or the other way around. So the Feyenoord fans would sort of make a hissing noise, trying to be a sort of gassing Jews type thing, to wind them up in the stadium. At one time, two of the groups of fans had a fight in this wasteland area. And I think one of the Ajax fans got killed by a hammer to the head. So the next game, some of the Feyenoord fans went along with big blow-up hammers to wave them, taunting the fans. And it just made me think, I thought, that's the mindset of people who are just willing to turn or be stirred up into absolute hatred against another group for no reason at all. They'll latch on to things. But the reason is that's the mindset. They're waiting to turn on someone in hatred. And I think that element is present in society. It can come out through football hooliganism. It can come out with, I wouldn't use the word Islamophobia, I hate the word, but it could come out with hostility to Muslims, it could come out with race hostility, it could come out with hostility to gay people, or all sorts. But I think the issue there is the mindset of those people. If it wasn't one thing, if you campaign and persuade them that, Ajax fans are really quite nice, they wouldn't become nice people. They would turn on someone else. Because their mindset is that you're just ready to turn on a group.
I agree, but I would argue that these people have, not in all cases because they're sociopaths, but I would say that these people have not been well socialized.
Yes.
And that their hatred comes from lack of socialization. But I completely agree that they have hate within them, and this hate will find a target no matter what it is.
Yeah, yeah. And the other aspect of that is it's an aspect of human nature, particularly with men maybe, to protect the in-group.
Yeah.
And I think it's got a positive side to it. I mean, if someone's attacking your country, then you need people who are willing to say, right, we're going to turn on these and teach you a lesson, we're going to find out. So I think it's a part of human nature that's there for a reason. It's a positive thing. As it gets out of hand, it gets misapplied, it goes outside the boundaries of its proper application, if you like. And that's why generally it's a male thing that happens with it, because men have got a stronger urge in that direction, but if it goes way beyond...
Women have that with children and women and other women. I think men are more protective of groups, where women, I think, are more protective of sameness, so other women and children, obviously. And I think that's biological, same with men.
Right. Interesting. Right, where have we got to with the story?
Well, the story was that, I stopped doing back to porn. So I was working in porn. I had relatively good experiences, and I stopped doing porn at one point because the time was over for me. And at the age of 32, almost all my friends are straight. And I had a very close straight friend, and we were talking a lot about his relationship and also his sex life. And I was slightly irritated by the fact that I couldn't really participate in the conversation as much as I wanted to. And at that point, I never felt a strong spiritual connection with man. Sexually it was okay, but I never felt a connection. And I thought, maybe I should try again with women. It can't be worse than with men. And it was very, very difficult for me because that door had been closed, and had been closed for a very long time. And so it took me quite a while to reopen it, and then things fell into place, and I met a wonderful woman, and we started a relationship. Probably the first, I had relationships with men, few, but it never felt like, it's difficult for me to call it a relationship. And I don't want to minimize the connection that I had to them, but I didn't see a future. And that changed when I started dating women again, and it felt like something in me being completed by the opposite sex. And that was when I was 32. I'm now 41, and it was difficult for me in the beginning to engage in a relationship because I knew I wanted to move to Scotland, and I didn't want to start a relationship in Germany knowing that I would have to take the relationship to Scotland, building a house, all this uncertainty, and I have a huge fear of potentially losing my children if a relationship does not work out, because almost all my comrades from the military lost their children due to custody battles. And I thought finding a girlfriend in Germany, then moving to Scotland, put so much pressure, unless it's really both of our dreams, not just my dream. So I decided I moved to Scotland, build a house, and then I will find the right woman. And that was, I finished my house 5 years ago, and ever since then I'm like, okay, I'm here. And for me it's very, very difficult because I only want a relationship that has a family as its goal. So not just dating, I want a family. So if I meet a woman and she's not interested in having children relatively soon, I'm like, sorry. And it's difficult for me because a couple of years ago I said if I don't find a partner till I'm 40, I will stop searching, because for me it's very difficult to throw myself out there and actively search, and it's for me quite difficult to even talk to women because I didn't grow up. I didn't grow up with that, really. I don't have the practice, and I'm still hopeful.
Yeah.
And I think there's nothing that I would want to be more than being a father with a wife and giving my children a stable home and being part of the future, so to speak.
Yeah. I think that's a great thing. I think that's in everyone to some extent.
Yeah.
The desire to, it doesn't always work out that way. It's not always possible for various reasons. But I think there's something there.
And I think when we talk about that, we have to talk about same-sex couples and children.
So if we just go back to something. You said that the stage where you decided you wanted to move from relationships with men and you felt that moving to relationships with women. I mean, that touches on one of our policies, because at the moment it's heading towards being illegal. If at that stage you'd have wanted to seek some support with that process, if you wanted to go to the local counsellor and say, look, I'm trying to make this shift in my life, I find it quite tough, it would be really helpful to come and talk it through with you. My understanding is, I'm not sure if it's happened yet, or if it's about to happen, that will be illegal if it's not illegal already.
So that would go into the direction of conversion therapy.
That's what they were classified as. That's the term they use, even though no
So-
one actually is involved with it uses that term.
So I mean, I'm a very, very honest person, and I don't care if that puts a negative light on the policies of the Scottish Family Party. But the thing is, I still like men, and I can't just ignore that. And so every time when I meet a partner, I have to tell her that, and we have to come to a solution that works for us. And as the Scottish Family Party, you will not be happy to hear that, but that solution is usually in some capacity openish relationship, but under the banner of absolute honesty and looking after each other and not hurting each other. And also, for me, it's not just going out and doing whatever, but it's quite possible that at one point, because I feel my interest in man reducing. It's not gone. It's definitely not gone. But I feel it reducing. It's quite possible that at one point it will be gone. But I would hate to cheat on my wife because there is an urge that I can't control. I think conversion therapy, or helping people to deal with their sexuality when they don't feel comfortable with their sexuality, has to be valid and has to be allowed. I think that the therapist should be smart enough to say, maybe you can't stop yourself completely from certain tendencies, but this is how you can open yourself to other experiences, turn them around. I mean, that's what happens to pedophiles. I mean, there are I'm pretty sure the dark number of people that have pedophile tendencies is very, very high, but I'm 100% sure that almost all of them suppress it a lifelong.
Yeah.
And these people need help. These people, and I don't want to compare pedophiles with homosexuals, because one is legal, the other one is not legal, but both are sexual urges. And it's ridiculous to say that you can't control or direct sexual urges. That's ridiculous. And I'm still not convinced that homosexuality isn't something that comes through nurture, not through nature. There is no clear evidence that we are born gay or that we are turned or that we become gay.
It's very complex.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with being gay, but if you feel that you want to open yourself to a straight lifestyle, you should be able to get support. Very simple.
Yeah.
The same as straight people or somebody who lived a straight life who notices that he actually really likes men needs support as well. People need support with their problems. You can't just say, sorry, this is politically incorrect, we can't help you.
If someone's got a life goal, so long as it's legal, then if they want someone to support them in making some change in their life, I think it's
absolutely.
So we're going on. Just going back to where we got to before, I read a book once that was very influential on my thinking, very helpful, about sex, and it was saying around the world there are 4 moral intuitions people have about sex. People normally say these are conditions about sex. I hope I'm going to remember them now. I'll edit the video if I forget one. I'll say 3. One is that it should be individuated, by which they mean it shouldn't be a desire for sex. I wanted sex and Samantha was there, so I had sex with Samantha.
Yeah.
So it should be a desire for individuals. So I suppose in the context of what you were saying, I would say a desire for sex with men, for example, I would say that isn't in line with the intuition that sex should be individuated. It should be focused on an individual.
See, that's a very good point, because and that's what I keep saying quite a bit. A gay man is not into man, he's into specific man, just like a straight man is not into women, he's into specific women.
I think a lot of people are in the mindset that they're into women and they're looking for women, so they'll go out at night to find one, and then another night they'll go and find another one.
I agree, but they will still have certain people where they're like, oh, I ain't gonna have sex with her, or I ain't gonna have sex with him. These are, I would say that's somewhere between individual sex and having sex just with a group of...
Okay, let me rephrase
So
that.
I think it's on the spectrum.
Yeah, I can rephrase it slightly. So it's not just with an individual person, it's a desire for the person and also for sexual. So the desire for sex with someone is combined with a broader desire for a relationship with that person. Desire to have that person as a whole as well.
So the I would say, if you don't care about the person and the personality of the person you have sex with, I would say that you abuse that person as a substitute for jerking off. Pretty much, I would say that it's use. It's a it's a very low form of sexuality, I would say, having sex with a body rather than the person.
Right, let me carry on. Right, next one, mutual. That's obvious, we've covered that already. So mutual desire for sex. So if one person's thinking, I'm in this for the money, or whatever, then that's not right. It needs to be mutual desire for a sexual relationship. Right, what with the others? Committed. Needs to be in a long-term committed relationship. And the other one is exclusive. Most people's intuition is a sexual relationship would be with one person. Even if these worldwide tuitions, this has fallen lower than my philosophy of marriage I expressed earlier. But it should be exclusive in the sense that during a sexual relationship with one person, and that should be with the one person, there's something wrong with it. Involving someone else. And the reason for that, I think, is I think that the bond created by sex, I talked about the relational bonding effect, it's a very deep emotional thing, and it connects people at a very deep level. And I think if it isn't exclusive, then I think there's hurt to the other person because of that lack of exclusivity.
I through lifelong experience and meeting and talking to a lot of people, I can tell you that there are people who have a very healthy relationship, even though it is in parts open. But these people are exceptions. Their trust is incredibly deep, and they have they came to a point where this is okay for them. For example, I never felt jealous in my life. I would say that's a condition. You can't train that. And I would never say that my lifestyle or the things that are okay for me should be the norm in society. If the decisions that I make and made in my life would be the norm in society, our society would completely fall apart. The best thing, I think, for most people is a committed relationship, real honesty, and really caring for each other. And if I one day manage to be in a relationship that is completely committed, and I think I will be a happier person. I don't doubt that. At this point of my life, I have to be realistic with where I am. I criticize myself as well. And for me, the thing is, I really try not to do harm to other people, including my partner. I know that is very different from your choices, and I think that your choices are the right choices for you, and I think that for society, for the stability and the well-being of society, your version is closer to the more functional and better one. I think for society as a whole, it might be somewhere between us, more on your side.
Just go back to open relationships. If people have got an open relationship and they're saying, this is going great, this is what suits us, and it's fine. The things I would say is, well, it's not over yet. Who knows what the seeds have been planted now? Who knows how it's going to work out in the longer term? I would question whether both parties have been entirely honest.
I agree.
Because people are invested in a relationship, and both people want to maintain the relationship. And if one person might feel that in order to maintain the relationship, and there's also the effect on the third parties as well. Because if sex is so emotionally bonding and relationally bonding, so if say you've got a man and a woman, and the man is having sex with someone else, the person is having sex with, the woman is likely to feel this emotional relational bond being built up, and then might be hurt by not committing fully to them.
I could give you examples why it works in some situations, but I will not, because I'm not here to advertise open relationships.
Okay, right.
But I'd rather advertise committed relationships, because most people cannot, like, I truly believe it's the safest, the most loving, and the safest and the most loving way. But, and that is very important, the one advantage that I have over a lot of committed straight couples, because of my history, because of my past and my present, I have to be 100% honest about everything in my life towards my partner. And I think people that take committed relationships for granted often don't talk about everything, because they just take it for granted, and then they're surprised if one of them cheats. And I think often one of them cheats because they didn't talk about everything. They didn't talk about how they can accommodate each other. So what I would say, what you can learn from somebody who needs to be open because he used to do porn, speak about everything 100% open,
that's quite right.
and understand the needs of your partner. If you judge your partner for some darker desires, he will not talk about it, and he or she might end up somewhere else.
Yeah.
Because they're unsatisfied.
Yeah.
There are certain things you can't have in a relationship, but maybe you can have a version of that, or something that is a compromise.
Yeah, I would agree with you about the openness. I think that's really important. I guess if I were to give you a piece of unsolicited advice,
Please.
I think it would be, I think before seeking to enter into a relationship with a woman, I would say the important thing would be to be at the point where you can be completely committed into an exclusive relationship with a woman. I would say it might not be, I'm not saying this is an easy thing to hear. I would say it would be important to reach that point before going into a relationship with a woman, because I would fear the possibility of hurting the woman that you love in that relationship. That would be my.
I was in a relationship with a wonderful girl till November of last year, and one of the main focuses, well, it's incredibly important for me not to hurt my partner. And in a relationship with her, I saw the permanent possibility of hurting her, and actually not because of the open relationship, just because of my personality traits. And I would not want to be in a relationship with a person that is likely to get hurt by me. And if I see only the slightest, if my partner would say, sorry, this hurts me, then I would not do it. And then we would have to come to an understanding. Do we need to end the relationship, or can I change my behavior in a way to accommodate her?
Yeah. I tend towards the view that particularly within marriage, there's the possibility of dealing with a lot of issues. And if you say, like, you don't want to hurt your partner, I mean, I hurt my wife lots and lots of times, not physically, by the way, before, in lots and lots of ways, and say, oh, I didn't like what you did there, or whatever, and you work it through and you try and improve it. I think the context of marriage can help so much with that, because you're in the mindset that you have to work it out.
Oh, absolutely.
There's not the, we could go off in a different direction. It's not quite working out. You both know that there's only one option.
For
you
me,
don't work it out, you just
for me, relationship, marriage is such a crucial part of relationship for me. I would absolutely want to get married. Unfortunately, and I still want to get married, even though it's a rarity, marriage is a very, very bad deal for men in our society. And I think that our society should work towards towards a situation where marriage really benefits men, women, the children, and that men don't have to be afraid of getting married, fearing that they're going to lose everything.
That's a really important issue. We haven't really addressed that in the family party policies, but I've certainly become increasingly aware of it.
But the thing is, most of all, we have to make sure that people don't get divorced for nothing. I mean, I think 70% of divorces are filed by women, if I'm correct, and the highest reason for divorce is unsatisfaction. So it's not real issues, it's unsatisfaction. I would say in a lot of cases something that you can work out.
Absolutely.
And I think that I'm a men's rights activist. For me, it's very important that if men go through a divorce, their life is not being destroyed. But most of all, try to avoid divorce. Try to avoid divorce by family counseling or partner counseling. That's what the government really should support.
That's our policy to provide that.
It's so important that people learn to talk to each other and to stay together in good and bad times, rather than just like, oh, this doesn't feel good. I don't care that there are children involved. Let's just call it a day.
We've got a culture at the moment where if families do split up, obviously if a couple get divorced, it can be a very complex situation. But we don't want to stigmatise people. But on the other hand, we're in a situation where, say, bloke runs off with secretary and abandons children, or bloke runs off from family and enters into a gay relationship, then the general response in society is, okay, fine. You know, you've been true to yourself, you're fulfilling your destiny in life or whatever, and it's not frowned upon at all. So you need some element within society where there is the critical eye. The general idea now is that anything stigma is a bad thing. We're going to eliminate stigma. I think if someone's going to abandon their family, then there should be stigma. They should be worried about people are talking behind my back about it. Yeah, too right they are. And they should be. And you should be worried about the response that there's going to be to your actions. And that's the way that society can be, to an extent, self-policing. Whereas what's happened recently in Western societies is they've attacked every stigma. So you're trying to eliminate it. So there's not the self-policing effect in society. So people, basically don't behave as well. They transgress what ought to be proper boundaries. Not legal ones, but there ought to be a boundary there. And the boundaries are broken down.
I completely agree. And I also think that stigma and criticism and also punishment is important for a working society. And this stigma, kind of like with the HIV support groups, when I said, they've tried to remove all the stigma, it's like, well, if you don't tell people that having HIV is a bad thing, why should people protect themselves? And now people don't protect themselves anymore, really. And I do think that I know stigma is important. I think nobody likes stigma, but I think it's important to advocate positive behavior and keep people from doing negative behavior. On the other hand, I think it's incredibly important to highlight positive choices. So tell people, this is a good choice, this is a bad choice. If we just keep saying, this is a bad choice, our society will become... and we had those societies, like often through religious values, where it was a very, very strict negative view on certain behaviors. And I think you can have a strict view on certain behaviors, but have a positive view on the good behaviors. I don't want to live in a society where we only hear the negative aspects. Like, for example, with men. Nowadays, you only hear the negative aspects of men. Can we please highlight the positive behaviors of men? I think that would encourage men much more to show the good behaviors that they already show more often.
But I think stigma is an inevitable, it's like the other side of the coin of having moral values in a society. So if, in your culture, if you have a culture where, say, getting blind drunk is not a good thing, I think that would be a good value to society. But the flip side of that is going to be that when someone says, I was blind drunk last night, or they get seen staggering along the pavement, obviously, then inevitably they're going to be aware that people are making a moral judgment and disapprove of what they're doing, and that will be perceived as stigma. So in a sense, it's an inevitable corollary of moral values. So if the intention is to remove stigma completely, the only way to do this is by taking away the moral values.
Absolutely.
Now, on the other hand, the stigma can lead to sort of judgmentalism, sort of holier than thou, self-righteousness, or whatever. So you'd hope, even though people might hold values that disapprove of certain behaviours, that doesn't mean the person's going to be sort of ostracised or mistreated or whatever.
Absolutely.
But they still want them, they don't go out of the way to make sure the person doesn't actually realise that that's the...
See, so I go to church every Sunday, and our minister, she's lovely. Sometimes she's on holiday, and then other ministers step up. And times it's ministers from some Church of Scotland, and sometimes people come up from the Free Church, or more with more traditional views. And their views of, and they usually know that I'm bisexual, and there were moments where I had to challenge them even during the service, because they said something that I thought not was offensive, it was incorrect, quoting the Bible. So I correct them, please quote the Bible correctly. And then afterwards we have had a wonderful conversation, and the thing is, they did not agree with my lifestyle choices, but they loved me as a person, as a human. And I think that's very important to distinguish this. You can judge a behavior without judging the person and the person's value as a human.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And you can say, and like for example, when I go over to Germany, every time I see a Nazi sitting in public transport, doesn't happen very often by the way, I would ask, can I sit with you? And then I would start the conversation and say, look, I'm not right wing, I'm not left wing, I'm neutral, I'm interested in your opinion, can we talk about that? And I have loving and beautiful conversations with these Nazis that, and I talked with one recently, and he almost killed a person, and he went to prison, and he was very sorry about that, and I very harshly criticized his actions. But I can still respect him as a person, not his political views, him as a person. And I think we have to get to this point where we separate criticizing actions with criticizing a person.
I mean, just going back to the church, I mean, that's very definitely the central teaching of Christianity. About the value of people, but their sinfulness, or whatever you want to put it, as well. I would say in Scotland, you might occasionally find a Christian who will express themselves in a way that seems to be contradicting that. I mean, it's possible to do that. It comes across as though that's not the attitude that they've got. I would say that's pretty rare. Certainly in my experience, you mentioned the Free Church. I know quite a lot of people in the Free Church. All the ones I know, they'd be horrified if they heard someone presenting the message in the way that gave any other impression. I think within society there's the keen to be offended brigade. Who are keen to see things in the worst light. But on the other hand, I mean, there are occasions when I hear Christians speaking and I think, oh, you didn't quite get the right turn, as I don't exactly get the right turn every time as well. I mean, the classic example, soon after I came to Scotland, it was when Princess Diana was killed. And there was a minister on the radio saying, basically, she was going about her pleasures on the Sabbath. So you really can't have much sympathy. Basically, you deserve all you get if you go about your pleasure. And there was another one as well. It was talking about some new series on the TV. It was obviously controversial for some moral reason. So they were asking a minister, and the minister said, I haven't seen it, but I'm sure it's to be condemned. which maybe, I mean, on reflection, maybe he knew enough about it that was a justified statement, but the way it came across,
but see,
it wasn't brilliant.
See, I have to say, like, you know that I went to the meeting in Inverness for the hate crime laws.
Yes.
And there were a lot of people from churches, I think quite a lot of them from the Free Church, and at the end of the meeting, a man, who asked, does anybody else here want to say anything about the hate crime laws? And then this man stood up, and he was dressed very, very conservatively, and he looked like he had never smiled in his whole life. And he said, yes, I as a minister tell you this country is doomed. There are no more moral values, and so on and so on. And, ooh, very dire. And he sat down, and then I was the next one to speak, and I said, I'm bisexual, and for some reason, for our society and for the law, it's worse if I'm being attacked for being gay than the minister being attacked for being very conservative. And I don't agree with that. We should have the exact same protection, we have the same human value, and we can't expect people to be tolerant if we're not tolerant as well. And if we take away some of their rights and some of their protection, or if we get special protection, why shouldn't they oppose us? And in the end, 4 people from the church came over to me, shook my hand, gave me a little bit of a hug and said, thank you so much for speaking on our behalf, and said, just because we oppose certain decisions and lifestyles does not mean that we oppose the people, and we just want the right to express our views just like you should have the right to express your views. And I thought, this is tolerance.
Yeah.
This is reaching out hands. And unless, honestly, I have no problem with bigoted people, because most of them are bigoted not based on knowledge, they're bigoted based on lack of knowledge. They've never, like one of the guys from the church at this meeting, he said, do you have half an hour? Because I've never talked, and he was well in his 50s or something, I've never talked to a gay person before. Can we sit down because I'm interested in your worldview? And we had such a loving and positive conversation. Yeah. And he will leave this room different than he entered it. And it was because I opened the conversation, because I reached out my hand. Of course you can say, well, they should reach out their hand. They're hateful. Yeah. It's like, it doesn't matter who reaches out the hand first. If you want tolerance, you better be tolerant.
Yeah. The whole definition of tolerance is based on accepting and allowing to exist things that you don't like.
Exactly.
So it's got to stop, or it's turned into the fact that you don't like something or disagree with something, that makes you intolerant. But you can't even be tolerant until you're acknowledging this is something I actually don't like or disagree with.
Exactly.
That's when you've got the opportunity
to be
tolerant.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we covered a lot.
We have. Shall we say goodnight to our audience?
I think we should say goodnight, and it was a pleasure talking to you. I always find it very fascinating when we can disagree on some things, agree on other things, and but collectively try to work towards better and more functioning society.
Yeah, absolutely.
And more understanding from all sides.
Yeah. Well, it's been really interesting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And support and join the Scottish Family Party. We're not homophobes.
Right. Yeah, bye.